Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Power Hour podcast. I'm so excited today because I got a very special guest with me, Ilyas Khan, an enterprise architect and the co-founder of CloudSurge, which is a company that's changing the game in IT project delivery with their innovative pod models throughout the Power Platform and the Microsoft stack. Ilyas, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. I mean, someone a few weeks ago asked me kind of why I'm doing the podcast and
Yeah.
what the intention of it is for, and the intention of Power Academy in general. And I feel like we had a quick conversation about this, but freedom has always been the goal in my life, and I think it's been a goal in a lot of people's lives that are watching this. A lot of people will hear the kind of the job title co-founder and they'll associate that with freedom. So I'm kind of very curious to get into, you were delivering solutions within
Uh-huh.
companies for many years. You started CloudSearch in 2022. What inspired you to start your own company?
Yeah, I think it came from a couple of angles. Obviously, I've been in the IT delivery game for quite a long time now. So I could see that there were challenges in delivering solutions and projects and just general delivery in the UK. I'd been a hiring manager, I'd built teams, but I could always see some challenges within that. It's interesting when you say freedom because coming on to why I kind of co-founded CloudSearch, the whole purpose really was around fixing the delivery problems we have, and the way that organizations are set up to deliver IT projects and how much overhead and fat that introduces, which means inefficient projects down the line. But also I knew that I wanted to make a bigger impact. So being an architect, being able to build solutions, it was kind of one project or program of works at a time, and then becoming a kind of a practice manager or a practice lead allowed me to kind of have that impact at a greater scale. And that's when I realized I had potential to do something much bigger. And I didn't want to limit myself. So part of the why, I suppose, and kind of coming back to freedom, it's interesting because it's always a perception, right? That kind of running your own business or being an entrepreneur, it has a level of freedom to it. But it's actually funny, you end up more busier in certain cases, because what you're now responsible for is not just the end delivery on one program of works or one project or even one team's projects, but you're now responsible for a whole business and an organization, and there's a lot more that comes with that. So I think freedom is a perception. I think all of us in our personal lives, in our work lives, we strive to find that balance,
Mm,
what we call work-life balance, typically, right? And we strive for that balance. And I think with being someone who's focused in your career or focused in the outputs and the outcomes you want to deliver, I think there's always a level of freedom that goes away, because truly what you end up finding is you have more time to spend on more things, and therefore there are more fit things that fill that time.
yeah, no, for sure. And I found myself doing that. I mean, I remember coming into contracting, and I'm not sure if you've ever contracted, but it's a very
Mhm.
different landscape to full-time work. You're kind of on your own terms pretty much, and you attend your meetings and you can kind of work out of hours if you'd like. And it brings a unique sense of freedom for sure. But again, I'm always finding myself trying to fill that time with other things anyway, right? So the time that I probably saved that I'd be doing full-time work, I'm doing many other things. It's interesting that you mentioned work-life balance. I'm just going to ask a very blunt question. Do you
Yeah.
believe in work-life balance?
I believe in prioritization. So I believe that in life, we as people have priorities around us. And I think part of those priorities are our professional pursuits. And I think if you connect purpose to your professional pursuits, then I think it becomes easier. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but it's one that I kind of always go back to, in the sense of if I'm out there putting out something and delivering something of value to people around me, then that's really the key. So I think it comes back to prioritization for me, and how you choose the priorities in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the idea of associating purpose to what you're doing. I mean, I feel like for a while when I was much younger, you
Mhm.
think about money a lot. And I feel like a lot of young people would associate to this. But I've realized the true power of associating to purpose to certain things you're doing rather than associating it to the material things, which
Yeah.
has been a game changer for me. Um, So you've been in business for Cloud Surge anyway for about 3 years now, founded in 2022. It's 2025, the date of this, the year of this recording. So what are some of the challenges? I feel like you've alluded to a few, but what are some of the challenges, if we can dig a little bit deeper into that, that you found from starting
Yeah.
and building a company within the Microsoft slash Power Platform space?
I think for a lot of people that make the transition from either working for an organization or even contracting to then running their own business, I think there's a few things that kind of step out, and one of those is a mindset. So I'd always done businesses on the side. Like I started my first kind of entrepreneurial pursuit when I was about 14, 15. I started Khan Computers, and I was just, building computers and delivering them to people around me, both retail and both homeowners and people within their houses, and also businesses as well. And kind of I'd always done something on the side, but I think once you make the leap to completely, this is what you now do, and there is no other job on the side or anything that you're doing. I think the biggest shift is mindset. It's moving from, and my co-founder mentions this as well sometimes. It's moving from an employee mindset to an employer mindset, and that's different because and I mentioned kind of responsibility earlier on, right? And it's that shift. You're now responsible for a lot more, so the capacity of your thinking has to increase way beyond just, for example, me, I'm a techie, right? So I love the technology, I love making a difference through technology. But then I also need to think about the finances. I also need to think about the marketing. I need to think about how the sales is running. I also need to think about customer success management and other things related to kind of the operational delivery, like how talent is acquired and how, so your mindset has to shift into being much broader. You have to take responsibility for things that are much broader than you would have thought about before. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think as long as you keep that as your core in terms of that shift in mindset, I think that's what helps.
Mm.
If you imagine that you're suddenly going to become an entrepreneur or you're going to start your own business and it's all going to be plain sailing and you're going to have loads of people that can do loads of things for you, no, that's never how it works, right? You've got to get in at the trenches at loads of different levels. One moment you're going to be kind of finalizing contracts and how those look. The next minute you're dealing with the technical escalation, right? And the next minute you're pacifying a customer on ensuring that they're comfortable with the way you're going to deliver for them to get them onboarded. So there's a whole myriad of things, but I think it all comes back to mindset. I think if you can look at the challenge ahead and break that down for yourself and be mentally ready for it, I think that's the critical factor.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned a few different points there in business. And I remember when
Hmm.
I started kind of doing LinkedIn and doing kind of Power Academy and promoting my own brand, something that really stuck out to me was marketing. And I love Cloud Surge marketing. We spoke about that, and I
Thank
love the
you.
way that you market yourselves, and you've got a great team that work on that. What surprised you about that kind of mindset shift? So when you were working for yourself in your company, etc., what surprised you? So you mentioned a lot of different things there: marketing, also a bit of sales, and talent acquisition being another one. What kind of surprised you out of those specific subsets that you were like, oh, okay, this had much more of an impact than I thought it did, and I maybe didn't give so much appreciation to this before as I do now.
Yeah, I think marketing and networking. So I'd always um, been a fan of networking. I've always kind of been to different events and connected with different people. And you do that kind of, I mean, in the Microsoft community, we do that quite naturally anyway. But I think the scale of networking for me was I wouldn't say surprising. I kind of knew in the back of my head that this is something that you do anyway a lot more when you're out there in business. But I think the types of people you network with just grows exponentially. I think you're then, especially in my world, I've been in networking a lot more in the business space with other entrepreneurs, with other CEOs, with other directors of organizations, and kind of it's enabled me to look at challenges from completely different perspectives, but also find opportunities in different places as well. So I think that's one of the areas I don't think I took it for granted necessarily, but I probably underplayed the level of importance it has personally in my own head, and so that's been one of the things that's been more surprising for me. The second thing, which is kind of tightly linked to that, is the amount of time you spend on strategizing. So a lot of people kind of, even in larger organizations, they look at higher management or they look at kind of the C-suite and they think, those in their ivory towers, right? And they don't do anything. They just sit there having meetings. But a lot of your day is about strategizing. It's about strategizing the future. You're looking 5 years ahead. You're looking at what the trends are. Like right now, and I know we might come on to some of the topics related to AI, but we've been looking specifically at how AI is disrupting the app delivery space, the business application space, and then how we can leverage that to kind of create solutions for tomorrow's problems. So I think that level of strategization and the amount of networking outside of the tech community, that's been a kind of something that surprising to a degree, but something that's kind of really stepped out as being something that's vitally important.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's so important to be a few steps ahead, especially in that position, because so many things are changing so
Yeah,
quickly. Being prepared for what's coming, I think is
yeah,
super important. And on networking, I think in business, it's very important, as you mentioned. And I'd even go to say, and I'm sure you agree with this, but even if you're building your personal brand and trying to increase your income or trying to increase the opportunities that you have,
yeah,
meeting people, it's amazing to me how many conversations and how many jobs don't even hit LinkedIn, right?
yeah,
They're done on like WhatsApp group chats, or they already have the people that they can go to and they
yeah.
have their shortlist, and whoever's available will get it. And I think it's just so important to get to know people, which is a big motivation for starting this podcast and also sharing what
Yeah, yeah.
people understand within the space as well and can share.
I
Um,
think that's one of the keys, right? Because we are constantly learning. It's something I always tell kind of my consultants as well, that look, learning never stops, right? And
yeah,
and that's one of the powerful things I found with networking. It's allowed me to actually, expand my horizons in terms of the way I think about different things. When you're hearing about different challenges people are facing, I mean, we hear about challenges when we're architecting solutions or we're in there gathering business requirements, but when you're having candid conversations and open conversations with other business owners and other business leaders in a networking environment, not for the purpose of delivering them solutions. I think the shared ideas and the things you hear about really give you a inspiration, but b also kind of ideas for how you can solve certain solutions or
yeah.
certain problems.
For sure, there's so much power in speaking to other
Yeah.
people and gaining their perspectives. And like a lot of my ideas have come from that. Like one of the programs I'm currently building, it's stemmed from a lot of conversations I've had
Mm,
with a lot of people struggling in the power platform space and understanding what they need. And I
yeah.
think that's just so powerful. Ilyas, I feel like a lot of people look for practical solutions when they come on this podcast. Now, personally, and maybe a lot of people in our space associated with technology in general, we're quite introverted generally, right? You get your extroverts, but generally we're quite introverted. What kind of advice would you give to that person who struggles with networking? Like I always struggle with introducing myself. I'm trying to get better at it, but I always struggle with like seeing a group and then just kind of like saying, "Hey, how you guys doing?" What advice would you give to those people struggling with networking?
So I am quite extroverted, but I've never been a natural networker.
Mm.
So kind of what I find difficult is the small talk aspect. Being a solution-driven person, you kind of want a valuable conversation, right? So what I like
Yeah.
is real valuable in-depth conversation. So kind of I find it as a struggle initially as well. But one of the things I learn is just removing the mental barriers, right? So for example, if you're a consultant or you're an architect and you've just walked into say an event where you've got loads of people, you might not know anyone. One of the quickest ways is find yourself a wingman, right? So or wing person, right? Find yourself someone who's at that event that you've got natural rapport with or you know already, and then you can use that as a bit of a safety net. So that's especially for people who are quite new to going to events or going to networking or those types of things. So it's always good to have another person with you or another person you know at the event. But if that's not the case, I think one of the other barriers we have is we feel, and I know a lot of people for years have talked about this concept of imposter syndrome, right? But a lot of the time, the people will feel a barrier to kind of having those conversations because they will feel a little bit of an inadequacy in themselves. So self-confidence and being confident in your abilities, the knowledge you have, and even the questions you might have, right? And the things that are important to you, being confident with that and wearing your heart on your sleeve to a degree and just going out there having human conversations with people. I think that helps. I think when you aggrandize the event or the location or those types of things. I mean, especially in the Microsoft community, we're either at Paddington or other places, and you kind of, some of those places and some of the people and the names can feel a bit intimidating, right? But actually, most people are quite open. So, just going up to someone saying, "Hey, I've seen some of your posts on LinkedIn. I like X, Y, and Z. I wanted to discuss this with you, or I wanted to ask you a question," or even just generally asking how they are, right? I think people are much friendlier than we think, and I think we put up our own barriers. So, having someone that you can lean on a little bit if you're new to these events, but secondly, just being open and just knowing that everyone else there probably got the same sort of reservations that you have as well.
Mm.
And by just opening up conversations, I've been surprised at the types of people that have had conversations with, in terms of people that previously years ago I might have thought these person's out of reach. Like, why would they ever talk to me, right? But when you put yourself out there, and you would have seen this with kind of your own experiences and doing the podcast and your own experience with the community, just putting yourself out there and lowering your barriers a little bit, suddenly it changes the world, especially when it comes to networking and event attendance.
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned a very important point on imposter syndrome there. I think I read an article years ago about how imposter syndrome is most common amongst tech professionals because things
All
are
right.
always changing, and there's no way that you can know everything within the
No.
space. So I can't even tell you the amount of people I've spoken to who come to me for advice, who want an MVP award, or they want to just be, more well known in the community and
Yeah.
provide value to the community genuinely, but they struggle to put themselves out there because they're like, oh, I made this post like a year ago and
Yeah.
someone left like a kind of harsh comment and then I'm never doing it again. Like, it's crazy how many
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have excelled in so many areas. They get so much people that, have love for the content that they make, but it's one comment that really puts you down
Yeah.
and makes you not want to do it again. Imposter syndrome, do you feel it, Ilyas?
Um, yeah, I think we all do. I think, the way to deal with it is being confident in your own abilities. I think it's about knowing your own limitations as well, knowing where you have gaps. I don't think that anyone who has professional integrity won't at times feel that, am I doing the right thing, or am I the right person for this job, right? And I think most of the time, especially founders of businesses, or kind of entrepreneurs, I think they'll feel that because it can be very lonely at times. I'm quite blessed. I've got a co-founder, and that's one of the benefits, right? I've got someone I can bounce ideas off. We're at the, we're constantly working together. But especially if it's a lone founder, or if you're out there in industry, or if you're contracting, or you're maybe an architect, and most of the time you're out on your own, you will question yourself. And especially in tech, right, where sometimes there's not a right answer. You might be given a problem from a client, and you might have your way of solving it, but someone else's way might be slightly different, right? And so I think it's two ways. One, we question our abilities and our roles, and I think two, we question our outputs as well. Like, is this the right solution for this thing? Is there a better way to do it? Do I really know my stuff? Those sorts of things. But I think dealing with it is just having that self-confidence, knowing your own abilities and knowing your limitations, and harnessing those. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I've always kind of had this mindset, and don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect with this, and I struggle
Hmm.
with imposter syndrome as much as anyone else, but I feel like everything nowadays is figure outable, and that's definitely not a word in a dictionary, but you can figure everything out.
Yeah.
There's stuff on Microsoft Learn, there's stuff that people are putting out in the community, there's
Yeah.
amazing blogs. I feel like anything from building a simple Canvas app to getting someone started on the Power Platform, governance and enterprise level in general, it's all
100%.
out there for you. It's all white paper, it's all information, and there are general best practices to
Yeah.
do quite a few things. When I got started a few years ago, I know there was content out there, but there
Hmm.
is certainly not the level of content as there is now because I
Yeah.
feel like it's just gaining a lot more prominence within the space. So, yeah, I mean, if you're thinking, for anyone listening, if you should take that architect job, if you've been past the interview stages and you've got the offer and you're kind of in that
Do
imposter
it.
syndrome area, just do it, right? Like,
Just
what's the
do
worst
it.
that can happen?
Absolutely. What's the
What
worst
is
that
the
can
worst that
happen?
can happen? Exactly. You
You know,
get some
even as a
experience.
hiring manager, right? I've always liked it when someone comes on with confidence, right? You've got to, I suppose you've got to know your abilities and have confidence in them, because if you don't have confidence in your own abilities, you're not going to pass that energy on to the person you're speaking to, right? It's one of the things that I found worked really well for me when I first started doing a lot of consulting with C-suite, right? For a lot of people that can seem daunting, right? Like, I'm going to speak to the CEO, CFO, CMO, and it can feel daunting, especially to those early on in their career. But if you're confident in the knowledge you have, you're confident that you can solve problems, and you're confident in your technical ability, then you just go in there and you use that, right? And I think what's also helped me, I think it's probably an answer to an earlier question, but one of the things that helps with imposter syndrome or with engaging at that level is actually the stakeholder management and what we call soft skills. I think bolstering those within yourselves, looking at things like psychology, looking at how people think, when someone is in, for example, a C-suite position, how are they thinking about this thing? What's important to them? I think that really helps you understand your audience. And when you understand your audience, that I think naturally lowers the barriers and helps you with your own kind of inadequacies or your own personal thoughts about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there is a level of human to that as well that a lot of people disassociate with C-suite, as
Yeah.
you've alluded to. And I think just doing simple things, like it's amazing how far you can go. I'm a big reader, and one of the early books I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale
Awesome
Carnegie.
book. Yeah,
Awesome
yeah.
book, huge book. And I read it the first time and I was like, this sucks. Like, what? Remember people's names? Like, what's that going to do
Yeah.
for me?
The most
But then
important word to a person
yeah,
is their name. So true.
exactly. And I was just like, this is terrible. This isn't true. But then I was working in a warehouse at the time and I was like, let me just try
Hmm.
some of this stuff. And I was like, all right, let me start like calling people by their names and remembering their names. And, I remember very quickly, and it's a weird story because a lot of people wouldn't associate kind of warehouse work to
Hmm.
kind of business acumen and what you can learn from there. But I actually started going up the ranks in the warehouse, and I had no intention of kind of growing there. It was always tech for me. But I went from one of the hardest jobs to one of the easiest because the manager would trust me, the people would trust me, and the work got much easier.
Hmm.
And that just made it much better. So yeah, I highly recommend that book. And I think people and psychology management is just so important, just
Yeah.
understanding what makes people tick. Um, Ilyas, I want to talk about AI and Copilot, and I want to talk about it from the Power Platform and Microsoft Sense, and then also in a personal angle as well. So let's talk about some of the trends and impacts you've seen to your strategy, seeing
Hmm.
AI and Copilot impact Microsoft all around. So how has that been for Cloud Surge and yourself?
So I think for everyone, we can't underestimate the shift that is in play at the moment when it comes to technology solutions that is driven by AI. I mean, everything from, if you look at the concepts of vibe coding now, you've got business founders who are sitting there and within a few minutes, they're using platforms to build their own apps, their proof of concepts, their MVPs without any dev skills. If you look at organizations now who are saying what percentage of their code is written by AI, that's just increasing. And if you put that together with the fact that AI right now is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only getting better. And if you look at even recently with what we've seen with kind of the video generation with audio capabilities that are coming out and I'm talking generative AI generally now, right? Then we can see how fast this is evolving. I think strategically from two angles, for anyone in the business application space, if you're not AI enabled, I think you're going to fall behind quite quickly. And we're seeing that even in Power Platform, for example, with plans and how they're moving forward. The concept of just putting in your idea for your business application, kind of that turning into a data model, users, the key requirements, that turning into then the solution, right? This is only going to keep evolving, and I think Microsoft themselves have kind of alluded to the fact that app development as we know it is going to change. And I think this is a shift in what we saw. So I've been in the Microsoft game since the early days of CRM on premise. So I've seen the first shift where we went from on-premise to online, and then we went from Dynamics or CRM to this XRM powerhouse that is Power Platform, right? That where they, decomposed all of CRM or XRM into its different tools, right? And then we saw the concept of citizen development emerge. And I know we in the community have different views on citizen development and how far it can really go. But that's now the shift we're seeing with AI. So what we're seeing is that whether you're a consultant or developer in this space, whether you're a business leader that uses these tools, your time from idea to solution has decreased rapidly. And I think most large consultancies aren't really geared up for this change. I still talk to some of the large consultancies and people I know there, where at the moment they're not even using generative AI tools, right? So they're not using that at all. And in some organizations it's still frowned upon. And I think that's a shame, because I've always been an early adopter when it comes to tech. So kind of I start as soon as kind of, GPT reared its head, I was kind of all over it, right? And
Mm.
I think every single generative AI platform that's come out since then, I've either used or I've got a kind of a paid account for. And right now I'm doing the same when it comes to vibe coding and solutions that even exist outside of the Microsoft platform for building applications, building agents, building websites, all using generative AI. And I think this shift is something that we're going to see increasing over the next 12 to 24 months. So my advice to kind of anyone in the space is going to be, first of all, learn these tools. Like if you don't know the difference between generative AI, agentic AI, and kind of the traditional machine learning AI that we used to have, then you're already quite behind. And if you're then starting to look at, well, how do I use this to enhance what I'm doing today? Um, then you're going to start to catch up, because suddenly what's going to happen is, if you imagine a developer that's AI enhanced, I'll call it, right, who's using generative AI tools, they know their game. They're good developers. They know how to architect solutions. They know what they expect from their code. But they're using AI to help them generate code components and kind of fix bugs and those types of things. Then they're going to be delivering a lot quicker than your old school developers. "Ah, AI, no, 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 you code everything by hand." That's like someone looking at kind of, I remember in the early days of web dev, right? This is like someone turning around and saying, no, no, I'm going to make my website in Notepad. I'm a true coder and I'm just going to sit there and code it. Like, really? Like that's not using technology for its advances, right? And so I believe any technologists or true technologists will not only be excited by the advancements in AI and scared to a degree in some angles, but if you don't recognize the shift that's coming and is already pretty much here, then I think that's quite scary in of itself for any technologist. I'll leave you with this on this point, right? I think what you're going to have in the spectrum of businesses, we already know as people in the Microsoft space that you've got a lot of people who haven't got their data right. They're either, manual processes, at best they're using spreadsheets, or even, I walked into one organization and their planner board was literally a big wall, and they literally hand wrote stuff on there and they moved stuff around, right? And that was their planner board. And this is a large manufacturing organization. So you've still got people on that spectrum who are then trying to get their data right. But you've got a lot of organizations who have adopted technology, and now they're able to kind of accelerate what they're doing with AI. And then you've got a whole bunch of new organizations. So if you think about any organization that's led by someone who's, age 20 to 30, the chances of them being AI enhanced is a lot higher than old school organizations. So that shift is coming. The question is, us as technologists, whether we A, adopt it, B, we put ourselves in a position where we can advise others on it, because that's what people look to us for, right? To consult, to give advice. Then I think we're going to be far behind. So I'm someone who's actually quite um, I like where it's going, because I can see the benefits. I think it's scary to a degree for organizations because of how immature some of the technology can be, but I think it's a no-brainer. I think if you're in the space, especially in the Microsoft space, where kind of the shift is definitely happening, I think the way we interact, I think the way businesses interact with solutions and data is going to rapidly shift over the next 24 to 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, yeah. And apologies about the siren, but yeah, my area, I promise, is
That's
not
the
dodgy. It's
urgency for AI.
just the urgency for AI. Exactly. That's a sound effect that was planned. Um, Data, so
Yeah.
important. As Power Platform professionals, I'm always encouraging people to harness and grow their data skills, right? I think it's so important for them to understand data structures, ERD diagrams, and we spoke a little bit about this as well, and just how to data model in general,
Yeah.
because I found myself more and more with this pressure of AI coming, a lot of companies having the urgency to get their data right. I feel like a lot of companies were like, no, we'll just do it like in another year. We've got other priorities now.
Yeah.
But now they're seeing this huge growth in AI, and they're like, if our data's crap, then the AI is going to be crap, and we can't stay competitive. So it's becoming more and more part of strategic organization strategic structure, basically. So Ilyas, what are some of the trends that you've seen with data in correlation to AI, and how can people within the Power Platform and Microsoft space adapt to it? Like, if we had to give some practical tips, would it be to go and learn Copilot Studio? Would it be to grow their data skills? Like, what are you seeing evolve for people on the front line and developing and consulting?
Yeah, I think for me, data skills, especially in the Power Platform space or the dynamic space, has always been critical. So when I was a hiring manager directly, kind of as a practice lead, I would always one of my questions in my interviews was always to get the people to so sorry, apologies to anyone who's been through interviews with me, was always to get people to do a live ERD. So I would give them a scenario. I would ask them to share whatever tool they wanted to on screen that they were going to draw this ERD on, and I've had everything from Paint to Visio. And one person actually hand drew theirs and was showing it up on the screen. But then I would evolve that scenario and get them to expand and change their data model. And I think this has become more and more important. And we've always had in the Microsoft world, we've always had that interesting dichotomy between should you is SharePoint really a data store or should it be Dataverse, right? But all that stems from is the importance of data and the relationship between data and your organization. And I think AI's just put a finer tip on that. So for me, for anyone in the consulting space, data skills are critical. If you can't hear a business problem and in your mind be starting to draw an ERD of what that seems to look like, then that's definitely a skill area that you need to brush up on. I think it's quite easy, and I think because of how low the barrier to entry is to build solutions, over the last few years, we've seen a lot more people come into the Power Platform space. And the two areas that I think are kind of growth areas, or the two areas that I've seen the split on: one, data professionals, people can really understand data. And that's going to become far more important for AI because AI tools need good data underneath it, as you said, crap in, crap out, right? So if your data's not right, or if an organization's data is not right, then the outputs aren't really going to be suitable. On the flip side, the other skill that I've seen a lot of people come into this space with is UI UX. So the way that people interact with data at the moment through applications and web portals, them being well designed, have good user-centric design, having good interfaces that are meaningful, that aren't redundant, redundant clicks and all sorts, right? And are accessible. That's vitally important too. So I see two angles approaching. Either I see in my experience, I've seen people who are great at the UI UX stuff, great at understanding certain things, but they may not be the best data people. And on the flip side, I've seen fantastic data people who may not create the prettiest solutions, but they can get your data really right. And this, I suppose, comes back to the way that projects are delivered. I think that what became clear to me early on in my career, and also kind of even more so now, is the multidisciplinary approach you need to delivering solutions. Um, the way that technology is evolving, you can't be an expert on everything, right? Like I might be a real expert on data and processes, but then I might be rubbish at design. I might be great at design and implementing certain things, but I might be rubbish at coding or in Power Effects or whatever it is, right? So I think that it comes back to something I said earlier in know your skills, right? If you're a consultant, you will know what areas A, you find appealing, but B, that you've got skills in that you can build those skills on. If you've got good data foundations, expand those data foundations, understand the value of data to businesses, understand how different things can be modeled, understand how different data models help or hinder your solution, right? At the same time, if you're someone who's more visual and what I call kind of more front end focused, then again, those are the things that you should be looking at. You should be looking at how those things are evolving with AI now, how interaction with data is changing, and how user experience is evolving as well. So I think there's multiple areas, but coming back to your point on data, it's critical. Data and data skills or any of those core skills, they need to be improved because otherwise you're going to fall behind, when it comes to actually really providing value in your solutions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of gold in everything you've just said, and I think you really boiled it down to two main points in the sense of, UI and UX. I feel like a lot of people struggle with that, and as well as data as well. But you don't need to know everything per se. You can have someone who's really good at data, paired someone really good at UI and UX, and you can come to a really good solution. I think for a while, people within the Power Platform, if they were to call themselves consultants or
Yeah,
developers, they've had a lot of demands on them from different angles, right? As you mentioned, UI and UX, data, creating automations, coding. I think you've had to put your hand in a lot of disciplines to become a successful consultant or developer. So use those skills and try and really focus on the part you like, right? I'm always
100%.
all for focus and niching. I think just understand that you can't know everything. You can know a little bit about everything, but you can't master everything. So
100%.
have something that's your space and really own it and make it yours. Um,
This is something that I saw, especially when I got more into enterprise architecture. So I was stepping more away from the low level specific areas of solution build to more
mm,
analyzing how technology is going to change a business overall, right? And that's when you realize even more so that you're never going to know every lower level, right? And so I think having a general good awareness of technology and technology platforms is important, but I absolutely agree with you. I think niching is very important, and it's a skill that kind of helps most people. And a lot of the good people I know in industry, and even a lot of the MVPs that are quite active in the community, you can always point out a little niche that this guy is the expert in this, or this lady is the expert. You kind of know, and they're good at focusing on their niche.
yeah, and I released a newsletter last week.
Mm,
I've been doing the newsletter for some time, but the main subject point of it was find your niche.
yeah,
And a lot of people are listening to this podcast, and there's no problem with it because I think there are important factors, but they want a higher income, they want more impact, they want more independence, and I feel like a lot of that does come with you finding a niche and really making it yours, being that go-to person. I think Francesco, who's known for the Power Pages work that he does, he can charge extremely high rates because there weren't a lot of people who can do it, and not a lot of people right now who can do it to his level. And there's a lot of power and in that, and
100%.
a lot of impact that you can have within your space. Um, it kind of gives me a good bridge into my next question, Ilyas, which is in terms of like a mindset shift that you feel like you've had to take either recently or throughout your career. So things like building a personal brand, specializing in a niche, developing business acumen, those types of things. What would you say you kind of started doing and you saw your career accelerate in a way where it couldn't without that thing? Is there something specific like that where you had to take a mindset shift? I know we've alluded to it and spoke about it a little bit earlier, but if you had to boil it down to a
Mm.
couple of things, what would they be?
So I think in terms of mindset, it links to what we said earlier about kind of I suppose lowering your inhibitions a bit and putting yourself out there. And I think LinkedIn is very powerful for that. For a lot of time, I'm an avid photographer. I like taking photos, but none of the photos used to have me in there. I'll be taking photos of different things I'd saw or kind of weird angles or zoom in shots and different things like that, right? And it was actually my co-founder that convinced me quite a while ago that look, you need to have yourself in photos, and you need to use those as part of your personal branding, right? And I think that's been quite critical. I think self-brand awareness and knowing what you're putting out there, what value it has to who, I think that that's quite important, and that's been a bit of a mindset shift for me in kind of and helped grow not only my following on LinkedIn, but the people I'm engaging with, the types of conversations I'm having, people that I meet in events, and they're like, "Oh, I saw your post about X, Y, and Z," or I saw you post about this, or and so that's been really helpful. And I think it's something that a lot of people want to do, but they feel like, they don't want to be that person, or they feel a bit cringe about doing it. And I think that's something that I had to get past, right? Where it's like, no, no, don't worry, just put it out there, right?
Mm.
Don't overthink it. And so that's been a bit of a mind shift for me, but something I've seen that's really bore fruit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of advice, or, a piece of advice that I give to a lot of people is no one actually cares. Like, we've seen so
Yeah,
many people do so many things online.
yeah,
Like, you posting something that might be mildly incorrect about
yeah,
environment strategies just helps you learn, right? You
yeah,
can
yeah,
delete the post if you want, and you can keep it up if you want. But chances are people either like it and they react and give
yeah,
you a comment and say, "Hey, keep it up," or they scroll past to the next 1 million
yeah,
things that they can
yeah,
do. I mean, we live in an economy where like you need someone's attention in the first like
yeah.
second, or they're going to
That's
the
it.
next
Oh, they're
thing. So
gone.
yeah, there's honestly not a lot to that. But yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. Building a personal brand, I think for me, has been something that I've seen create a big impact within my career, within myself
Yeah.
personally. And I always make a joke. I cringe at everything I put out. Everything online that you see about me, I'm
Yeah,
cringing before it goes out. These podcasts, the LinkedIn posts, the
yeah.
personal stuff, everything. But I just bite the bullet and just go for it and just
No,
keep that in your
it's
mind.
awesome, and it's been fantastic to see your journey, and this is it, right? Like, people don't expect, but the other thing is building in the open, right? And for example, some of the posts you share about your personal journey and those types of things, like they really resonate with people, right? And because you don't expect some of those things to resonate, and you think, oh, should I really post this? But then you post it, and you get like 100 likes, and people kind of really think, oh, that really helped me understand this, or I really resonate, and it's awesome. So I think, yeah, I think for everybody, drop those inhibitions. Put yourself out there. If you've got something to share, if you've got good knowledge. I remember when MCJ Matt Collins Jones, when he started his YouTube channel. Look at how fast it's grown, and look at where he's got to in terms of putting himself out there, right? And I think a lot of people who are in a similar space where they just started sharing. So for different people, it's going to be in different ways. For some people, it's LinkedIn. Right. For other people, it's like blogs, writing articles. That's what they find and they can do, and they want to do that. For others, it's YouTube and having a YouTube channel, putting out content out there. But whatever way you feel you can share your knowledge, share your experiences, do it. Don't think twice. Do it, because there is going to be, even if you help one person, then that's it. You've achieved a goal, right? Because you've helped someone with a challenge that they've had, and I think that's what I like as well. So a lot of the people I either follow on LinkedIn, or the YouTube channels that I subscribe to, is typically because there's some value that I'm getting, right? And we underplay our own value. We don't think sometimes that we can provide the value we can, but it's others that can see that. So yeah, just share your knowledge, share your experiences, and there'll always be someone that can learn from it, or be helped by it.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think a problem a lot of people have is the metrics. I think people don't see it, but for a year straight, I was posting a series called Solution Sunday. It would take me
Uh-huh.
hours to make. It would be like custom code
Yeah.
samples. I'd give everything away. I'd put it on my website, and I put it out there, and it got like a like, or it got 4 likes, and the like would always be like my partner, which would be the one liking it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
happened for a year straight, right? I remember doing that until like I was doing it December 2023, and then I
Hmm.
did it until November 2024, which I got my award, my MVP award. And yeah, like no one was reading my stuff. I mean, I felt like no one was reading it.
Yeah.
Like my best post probably got like 35 reactions, but I
Uh-huh.
definitely say a lesson that I took from that is do something for a year and don't look at the numbers, and you
And
would
don't look at the
be
numbers.
90% of people which are also doing it at 150%. And it's tough because you put a lot of time into it, but That's my advice. If you're looking at the
Yeah.
metrics, don't look at the metrics until a year after, and then you can start shifting and
Then
evolving
start
some things.
analyzing and seeing why did that,
Yeah,
why did that spike happen here? But it's weird, right?
exactly.
Like, you'll post about something random and suddenly it'll get like, the numbers are through the roof and it's like you're trying to analyze like, what, why did that post get all the attention, right? So I think it's just putting stuff out there. Keep going and keep doing that and don't over focus on, how many people are reacting or liking or sharing because most people are silent observers. That's one of the things I learned, right? Most people will look at it, read it. They maybe won't click like, they won't comment, but they will read it. And the number of people I've seen that have noticed something or have mentioned something, but I don't see them liking or commenting on my post, but they're definitely looking and watching, right? And so there's a lot of silent observers. So just kind of fill yourself with the comfort that no, there's thousands of people that are looking at this. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. And LinkedIn has the impression matrix, right? So you can
Yeah,
literally see how many people have seen it. I
yeah.
think something about LinkedIn that people struggle with is, and it annoys me, when I like a post, it literally announces it on people's feeds that I've liked a post. And some people are just like, I don't want that. Like, I just kind of want to look at stuff and enjoy it and not like actually have it on people's feeds that I did something.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really annoying people because everyone I meet at events, they're just like, oh, like I see you all over my LinkedIn. Like you post every single day. And I feel like they enjoy
But
it.
that's
But
positive for your personal brand, right? And to a
yes.
degree, and it's that whole age-old adage of there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Could be true sometimes, but the point is, it's like if you're putting yourself out there, then it means you're more recognizable in industry, and especially as an MVP, then you want that and you need that, and the more you're talking and engaging with people, right? The question just then becomes, how do you constantly evolve your content to provide value? That's all
Yes.
really your thought process really becomes.
Yes, for sure. And it all goes down to value, for sure. How much value are you providing to the people that are consuming your stuff? Um, and you never know what it's going to be, right? So try different stuff and see what's working, see what's been working, and try and add your little twist to it. I'm not for plagiarizing, but I'm all for inspiration, right? So if you see something that's working, try and adapt it to
Yeah.
yourself. But yeah, we've spoken about content a lot. Ilias, I'm super curious about I'm a huge advocate of habits. I love,
Mm,
stacking habits and kind
yeah.
of adding them up and tracking them on my phone.
Hmm.
You've seen success in your career, obviously starting your company
Hmm.
and company before that as well. What are some of the habits that make you tick? What are some things that you live by, if anything?
So I think a couple of things. So I'm a very random type of person. So I'm the type of person who wake up in the morning and will decide to do a road trip and those types of things, right? So I don't stick to schedules very well, other than the schedules I force myself to stick to, like in terms of meetings and stuff like that, right? But some of the things I absolutely live by is starting my morning with kind of a spiritual sentiment, I'd call it. So kind of centering myself, kind of reconnecting with purpose, reconnecting with why I'm doing what I'm doing. So kind of I feel starting the day in that mode. And some people call it gratitude, some people call it, people call it by different names. Some people call it prayer, but whatever you call it, right? But that reigniting of why you're doing what you're doing and what's important in life and starting the day in that way, I think is vital. I think the other thing I like to do is in the evening, I like to do a bit of self-reflection. So I like to reflect on what I've done and how I reacted to certain things and kind of self-analyze and say, okay, did I react to that in the best way? Could I have done something differently there? So top and tail of the day, I think are very important. I think starting in the right mode and the right mindset and ending with some reflection, I think that's critical. Outside of that, I'm very free flow in the sense of I like to take things as they come. However, some of the suppose habits, I always like to prepare. So, for example, if I'm going into a meeting or if I'm going into a session or if I'm going into a kind of a workshop, always like to be prepared and kind of know what I'm going in for. So I think those as core habits. One, preparing myself for the day and kind of ending the day with a bit of kind of the top and tail of the day, and the thing in between just making sure that I'm mentally prepared for what's coming next. I think those are the critical things. Um, Outside of that, I like to do a bit of sports now and then, play a bit of football or other things, and kind of keep myself active. But I think habit-wise, those mental habits I think serve me best. I think just kind of the way I approach and the way I think about the day.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like the mental habits can be some of the most important because when it's physical habits, things you're doing, those are equally, we could say equally as important, but they're more easily measured, I'd say, because, you're actually doing the thing. It's kind of registered in your mind that you've done the thing. But I think with mental habits, you can really get lost in the flow, right? So trying to have that gratitude in the morning and have that reflection in the evening, I think is so important and something I try and do every day. So I genuinely love that. I love how you spoke about preparation as well, because I found it really weird when I came into the space how many people like mess up their demos. Like they'll be demoing live and it wouldn't go
Yeah.
right. And I'm just like, I know for a fact, like 30 minutes before you weren't testing this out. And why were you not testing it
Why
out
were
30
you not
minutes before?
testing it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like why were you like sometimes it doesn't go right. You tested it 30
yeah,
minutes ago and it breaks through and that
yeah,
sucks. And I'm sorry. You
yeah.
tried. But
So
I
you use
think
up your limits, and then you get to the limits like, oh, I don't have enough AI credits
That's
left.
happened. Yes, that the exact same thing has happened to
Yeah.
me with AI credits, and I'm not going to talk about that now. But yeah, the exact same thing happened to me with AI credits, which I hated. But yeah, like I think some something like a 15-minute prep before can give you so much more confidence and can give so much more confidence to the people you're demoing for, whether you have your own company, whether you're trying to grow within your organization. Just having that little bit of prep before the meeting can bring a smile to the faces of the people you're demoing for or presenting to, and they would really appreciate it. And I think these small things go a long way. So I love
No,
that you
they
said that.
absolutely do, and I think it's, coming back to advice. I think it's vital for everybody to do. I mean, if you're about to walk in, the amount of times I've myself been in a session and I've had either colleagues or other people join, and it's quite clear they don't know the business that they're talking to. They don't know who the people are, what their roles are, what's driving them. And I think that's important. If I'm about to walk into a requirements gathering session, I can see that someone's added a whole bunch of managers to that session from the target client. I should go and look them up. I need to go on LinkedIn. I need to check them out. I need to go to the company page. I need to look at what that person's history was. What's their background? Where did they come from? Now I can understand that person. So now when I'm having a conversation with them, I can understand their background. I can understand how technical I can be versus how kind of business focused I need to be. All of those things. So and plus just knowing, right? It helps build rapport. I'm a big fan of rapport and kind of psychology anyway. So you've got to be able to build rapport because that's how you're really going to have good conversations. So yeah, prep is king.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure, for sure. And I feel like nowadays there's not really a lot of excuse to not prepping for things because, as
You
you
can just ask
mentioned,
Copilot,
yeah,
prep me
you
for
can
my
ask
next meeting,
Copilot.
go and do some research on all the people, and actually it comes back with some decent stuff.
Exactly. If you put in their
Yeah,
LinkedIn links basically, and you use the deep research feature in ChatGPT, it is amazing the amount of stuff that it can do. I use it to help me research for some of these episodes, to be honest, and it digs. Obviously, I verify because I don't want to say someone is something and then they're not, and then I'm
yeah.
embarrassed mid-episode. But yeah, like in general, I like to use that, and I think it's really
Quick tip
interesting.
as well, because on LinkedIn you can download the profile, right? So if you're about to go into a
Yes.
workshop, go onto LinkedIn, click download profile, you get a nice PDF, stick that into AI, make it do some research for you, go yourself, then look at the links, and suddenly within 10 minutes you know what you need to know, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of value in that. And I think nowadays a benefit of everyone posting, because we spoke about it, is okay. Some platforms, a lot of platforms, all platforms are pretty much saturated. But that gives you a lot of things to go off, right? So when you check
Yeah.
that manager's LinkedIn, chances are they've posted something, or they've reposted something, or they've liked something, and
Yeah.
you can kind of use that as a little bit of a okay. Don't use it as a saving grace, and you're
Yeah,
gonna
don't make it
dust
feel like
the
you're stalking
yeah,
them, right? Like don't be like,
exactly.
yeah, so
Just
how
bring
is
it
your
up.
pet
Oh,
dog that was ill last
yeah,
week? And they're like, what?
yeah. It's like on the 28th, you were in Morocco. How
Yeah.
was it? I was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make it feel like you're stalking them, but just understand them, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like just having that in your mind, and I feel like you've alluded to this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you're a true believer in energy, right? Like exuding confidence, knowing your stuff, and what you know internally, even if you don't say it, you can exude that a lot. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's very important. Um, okay, Ilyas, that has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, in the last
No
section of
worries.
the podcast, I always like to roll out the red carpet for my guests, let the people know where they can find you, what you're up to. The floor is yours, my friend.
No, thank you. So look, I'm quite visible on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/Solution Khan. If anyone wants to get at me, in terms of all my contact details and everything's going to be on there. I think for the thing I'd leave everyone with, and the thing I'd want them to think about is look, one of the things I found over my career is connecting profit with purpose. Right. And it's why we started Cloud Surge because we wanted to connect, delivering positive change both in terms of the clients we have. We're delivering a project positive change globally in terms of the academies we run and kind of the grassroots work we do. And that would be my invitation to everyone. Like, don't think about the just the outputs you perform, but think about the outcomes of what you're doing, right? Think about how what you're doing is actually providing a positive change around you to people, to businesses, to communities that you're in. And that would be my ask. That would be my kind of, and if anyone's into kind of creating positive change, more than happy to collaborate with people. It's one of the things I found more so. I found myself collaborating more so than doing business with people. It's kind of finding different angles to work together on different things, finding angles to kind of create change in different ways. Working a lot with the startup and charity space. So yeah, that would be my one thing I would leave with people is connect profit to purpose, connect your outcomes that you're doing to some sort of positive change in the world, and let the rest come. We get over focused with, for example, the amount of money I'm going to earn or where my career is going to go. But if sometimes we think about what is the, am I leaving the world in a better place than it was when I started my journey in the world, right? I think that's a huge metric for us. And I think the rest will just come. I remember when in my early days of consultancy, one of my managers said to me, and this was about customer service, right? They said, look, focus on the customer, focus on giving them good outcomes. The numbers will look after themselves, right? The numbers will always look after themselves. And that's what I found in business as well. I think connect to why you're doing what you're doing and connect to providing some sort of benefit. The rest will look after itself. The money will look after
Yeah.
itself. Your career will look after itself.
I love that. I love that bit of advice. And it's amazing how I have literally a page in my journal where like I had this epiphany, if you'd like to call it, but where I literally decided that I'm not going to be doing things for money anymore. And I was like, all right, I'm going to shift it to the other side of the scale, which is
Yeah.
purpose, which is helping people. And I remember to prove to myself that I'm not going to be doing things for money anymore. Obviously, sometimes there is that
Yeah.
balance, as you've mentioned, purpose first and then profit, because sometimes you need that profit to fuel the purpose that you're
Yeah.
you're putting out in the world, of course, which is why we build businesses.
Yeah.
But I think, like I was saying, I set out a goal for myself to make a free power platform course and just put it out there because I was like, this is a lot of work, but I think it'll impact a lot of people. I think they'll learn a lot from it. So I just put it out there on Udemy, and it seemed like it had a good impact. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's amazing to reflect on what you said, how if you focus on impact and purpose, the money and the profit will take care of itself eventually.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you look, ultimately as a business, what we do is we help people scale their delivery, right? And we provide services to help do that, teams on demand, delivery teams on demand. But it's really what that allows us to do that's the key. And it's actually how my co-founder and I met when we were working together on a project through COVID, kind of generating PPE that was being sent to hospitals and stuff. And so kind of even when we came together to start Cloud Surge, that's kind of resonated and that's followed through in everything we kind of do. So no, absolutely, that would be my advice to everybody is find the purpose in what you're doing, and one, it will make you much happier in doing what you're doing too.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll make you want to get out of bed in the morning. So I couldn't
Absolutely.
couldn't agree more. Ilyas, you've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for
No, you've
coming
been
on.
fantastic, Hardang. Take care. Thank you.
Take it easy. Bye bye.